Welcome to Evolution on the Mic. I am your host, Ariana de la Cruz.
And I'm your co-host, Antoine Dove.
And we are back, season 4, The Power of Positive Thinking, episode 3, Mental Health and Positive Thinking. Y'all, in our last episode, we discussed the benefits of positive thinking in personal relationships. We shared how positive thinking strengthens trust, communication, and respect in all relationships, while negative thinking destroys trust, communication, and respect in all relationships. If you guys have not watched that episode, I highly recommend that you check it out. It was very impactful, very informative to you and your relationships, all right? But on today's episode, all right, we will be discussing the effects that negative thoughts has on our overall mental health and in our brain. So, but before we get into all that, Antoine, how you doing? How's your week been?
Week's great. Week's great. Finishing up some
Awesome.
final boxes and packing things, heading up into this weekend. I'll be moving to my new place, which is exciting. So just spending some time finalizing a few things here before it's moving weekend.
Awesome. Oh yeah, you're gonna be moving this weekend. That's right. Man, moving is so stressful.
Tell me about
It
it.
is so stressful. I mean, when I moved back in February to this apartment, I had help and it was brutal. It took me like months to like recalibrate myself, to get myself back into the zone of my
Mhm.
new routine, of the new place, of like I had to refinish my whole apartment. It was a lot, So I'm gonna have grace on you, Antoine. I know we're
Thank
doing
you.
this podcast and I might want things in a certain way or, in a certain time frame, but I'll have grace because you had grace on me in my few months that I was a little wacky and not always on point or on time. So but I know you're gonna be fine. You're gonna
Yeah,
be
we'll
good.
get
You're
through
gonna
it.
be good. God is good.
Yeah, we'll get
All
through
right,
it.
cool, cool, cool.
How's
I
things
mean,
with you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. God is so good to me, man. Like I can't even like complain. Things are going well, especially with this season and talking about the power of positive thinking. It's just so on time, like things are going well and I'm feeling good like 90% of the time. And then there's a 10% where I really get into a little loop of negative thoughts, right? Of things are just not going to work out. And it's just like certain just little things that just trigger me to spiral down a rat hole. And I'm just so grateful that, we're doing this season. We're talking about positive thinking and what we're going to be discussing today about how negative thoughts, affect our mental health and our well-being and our brain functions and our physical health. Because I've noticed that in those moments that things are not going my way or I cannot see a way out, I've noticed that in this season and, coming up with the concept and creating the content, it's educating me on how I need to position
Mhm.
myself mentally if I don't want, to have these negative effects that happened when you're not being optimistic, when you're not thinking positively. So it's important for me to teach these things and these concepts because I see how it's improving my mental health. I see how it's improving my physical health and my spiritual health as well. In these last, 2 episodes that we've had, we've spoken a lot about the importance of positive thinking, right? We've provided tips and strategies that you all can take to improve your ability to think positively, right? And seek solutions to every problem. But as we know, our reality is shaped by our thoughts. But we haven't really spoken about, and I want to dig deeper into what happens when we do the opposite. Like I had mentioned, you know what I mean? Those negative thoughts and those negative thinkings and how they affect us. Because yes, we've been talking about positive thinking, the effects that they have, the things that we can do to think positively. But on the reality is that we all tend to think more negative than positive. That's like our go-to, right? That's like our initial response to things when things don't go right. We get laid off from the job. Oh my God, my life is over. I'm going to be on the street. I'm going to be homeless. Right. Our minds just tend to go to the worst case scenario when things happen. And I want to really dive deep into the things that can arise in your life and your mental health when you're in a negative state of being and you're not even trying to consider being positive, because I do believe that positive thinking does can improve your life. Okay. So that's my hope, right? My hope is that you guys become encouraged to be mindful, to find yourself, if you're finding yourself in a negative loop, that you can start thinking positively in your life. Does that make sense, Antoine?
Oh, totally. Yep, totally does.
Awesome. Cool. So I want to start with going over some ways negative thinkings may impact you. Okay. So there's four main things that I found, and they impact your self-esteem and motivation, your cognitive bias, which is you constantly thinking negatively and catastrophizing everything, which I do a lot. It impacts your stress response, right? And it also impacts your emotional regulation, your ability to regulate your emotions. All right. The first one that I want to go over is how negative thinking impacts your self esteem and motivation, right? Negative thoughts can undermine self esteem and motivation, leading to a decreased ability to engage in activities or pursue goals, which can further perpetuate a cycle of negativity. I mean, I've been there, and I'm sure that we've all been there. We are, in this negative loop. We're thinking negative and we don't think that we're good enough, right? We don't think that we're smart enough. We don't think that we're capable enough, right? We don't think that we're pretty enough. So we think that we're always going to be single, right? And we're never going to find, the man or woman of our dream. And this messes with our self-esteem, right? If we want to lose weight and we're just looking at ourselves in the mirror and looking at our, not liking what we're seeing and not having the positive mindset to want to do something about it, is going to reduce our motivation to even try to go to the gym or try to even find ways to incorporate better eating habits in our lives. So when we're not thinking that we're smart enough, that we're capable enough, that we're pretty enough, all these things will lead to inaction, right? They will lead to us to not even try to pursue our goals, the things that we want to do to have a better life. So Antoine, like, have you experienced any of these things, like, negative thinking and how it's affect you, your self-esteem and your motivation?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think I love the idea when you talk about a loop. It's such a great visual when you think about going through the experience of having these negative thoughts, because when I have negative thoughts, it feels like it's never going to end. It feels like one thing leads to another, on and on and on and on. And it truly is this loop that keeps circulating, and we stay on this negative merry-go-round, so to speak,
Mm.
and it takes us on a wild ride. And just like on a merry-go-round, when you get off, you feel dizzy, you feel discombobulated, you're all over the place because you don't have that center. And when I think about self esteem and motivation and what you were just saying, what really resonated with me is this thought of there being a lack thereof. And that's the problem with negative thinking. It creates a sense of there being a lack or a gap or there's something missing. I'm not this enough. I don't have enough of this. It creates this sense of that you are missing something to
Yeah.
be able to achieve what you need to, which is where, to me, I feel like the lack of motivation comes in. If you already feel like you're starting out behind the eight ball, like you already feel like, I don't have this, I don't have that, and we start doing this thing of stacking, right? We keep putting one thing on top of another, one thing on top of another. And I don't have this, and I don't have this, and because I don't have this, and this means I can't do this. Before you know it, you've completely made this huge mountain that you have to climb, just like we were talking about in some of our earlier episodes, that now feels completely impossible to scale.
Yeah.
And that has been my experience. The times I've allowed my negative loop to take over my life, I've ended up coming to a place where I see something so large, there's no way that I can even scale it. I don't even know where to start. I become so overwhelmed in that moment that I just want to quit. I'm like, why even try to do this? I'm at a place now where I feel like it's not even possible for me to even get started with the first step because I have a list of 10 things I need to get done. And so, yeah, I think it totally impacts, negative thoughts totally impact our self-esteem and take us down this rabbit hole of things that we just feel is completely impossible to do.
Yeah, I just thought of something that like happened to me. Like since I was younger, for some reason, I always thought that to attract a man, you have to have a like big breast and a big
Mm.
butt and a small waist. And I've always felt that since I didn't have that, I wasn't a skinny, girl ever. And I don't have big breasts and I don't, have a big butt. I always felt that because of that, I will never attract a man. And if I did attract a man, that man is going to cheat on me. So why even bother starting to manifest a man? You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like, why? When he's going to end up cheating on me because his ideal girl will always be that thing that I always told myself that I don't have, that I'm not that. And that really has impacted my self-esteem,
Mhm.
in the past, in trying to pursue a long-term relationship. And for the longest time, my relationships have all been short-term, right?
Mhm.
Like couple months, maybe a year, maybe 9 months. Like I have not had a really long relationship ever. And for those that have been with me know that. Like I have commitment issues. I cannot just stay with one person. And I think a lot of that stems from low self-esteem,
Yeah.
and some of my partners have told me that, like, you always think you're not good enough. You're always thinking the worst and you have trust issues and all these things. But it all boils down to the negative thoughts that I have of myself, right?
Mhm.
My negative thoughts and how I view myself, that I don't have the perfect body and I'm going to get cheated on, you know? And maybe that's because, my mom cheated on my dad. That's for another day. But, for whatever reason, it's negative thinking. And now thinking about this is like, what can I do to transform that? Right.
Mhm.
And it's like, when someone is ordained to be with me, when God has ordained a relationship for me, they're going to see me and just love me the way I am. Right.
Yep.
They're going to embrace my curves. They're going to embrace my mindset, my little sassiness and the heat that I bring as a Sagittarius fire sign. They're going to love all of it. Right. That I'm very strong minded, opinionated. I'm going to speak my mind. Right. And now my mindset has shifted from, I have to have these things, right? All external physical things. And if I don't have that, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not pretty enough, bringing myself into this deep negative state. And then what's the reality of my life? I've been single most of my life. I have not been in a long-term relationship. My relationships don't last. So you see how that has impacted
Yeah.
my whole life, the reality of my life, because of what has been going on in here. And now I have shifted that into the next relationship that I'm going to be in is going to be ordained by God. He is setting that, preparing that person up just for me. And I am perfect just the way I am, like I said, with my curves, with who I am, with the person that I portray that other people might not like. My person is going to embrace all of that and find beauty in all of it. And that gives me automatically a different mentality of myself. It gives me a different mentality of what's to come, of my future. And I know that that's eventually going to alter my reality of me being with someone and being with them, committed long term. I have faith in that. But had
Yeah.
I never tried to shift that perspective from a negative one into a hopeful one, into one that it's embedded in God, right? Because anytime you put things in God's hands and you embed things in Him and you leave it on His terms, all of that is positive vibes. That is all positive thoughts. And it does take time to get there. It does take time to see yourself going to God and putting in His hands and having God help you with the negative thoughts and to shift it into positives. But it can greatly impact you, your mental health, your whole life, the reality of your life. It can put you in a dark place. Like you can just isolate yourself and never even try to be with someone. And we all were born to be, in partnership with someone.
Yeah, I love that example you just shared because back to what I was saying about the negative loop taking away by you shifting that language that you use and you said, I love this about myself. The person that sees me will see these amazing things that I see in me. What it's doing is it's giving you value.
Yeah.
You're acknowledging the value of who you are. You're no longer seeing yourself of being less than, you're seeing yourself as being desired. I
Yeah.
am this person. I have these things. Someone who sees me for who I am, respect, right? Last episode we talked about someone who sees me for who I am, loves me for who I am, will love these things about me. They will love all this about me. And I am a valued asset. I am something that if someone sees me, they go, that's my woman. They don't have to second guess. They don't have to think twice. And you don't have to feel like you have to become something you're not to attract
Mm-hmm.
the right person. I love that. Like because I feel like it's so, and I'm so grateful, one, for you sharing it, because
Mm-hmm.
I've found myself in that same boat at times with my weight, where I'll second guess my ability to be a great partner or spouse for someone because of my weight. And also from my past traumas of relationships that I've been in, whether it be a long term. I mean, I've been in a relationship for 10 years one time and it didn't work. And it
Wow.
makes you start to look at yourself and go, is it me? Did I do something wrong? And we begin to tear ourselves apart as opposed to just like you said, shifting that language. It's not about, is it me? It's okay, this didn't work out. God, you saw something I didn't see. Thank you, God, for seeing that. I know in due time you will make that a reality for me, so then I understand why. But in this moment, you saw something I didn't see, and you allowed this to occur the way it did. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now I will continue to move forward as who I am, and know that when the time is right, you will bring the right person that needs to be in my life. And I think that's
Yeah.
powerful. That is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, which leads me to my second point, cognitive bias,
Mm,
right? Which means just you catastrophizing everything, you know, expecting everything to go bad, right? Or over generalizing, right? Which is viewing one negative event as a pattern. In your situation, you were with someone for 10 years,
mm,
right? And it's like you could have just been, catastrophizing the whole thing or overgeneralizing that one event. Well, this relationship didn't work. I was with somebody for 10 years. Something must be wrong with me,
mhm,
right? I must be the
mhm,
problem. And you
mhm,
could have let that negative thought spiral into this just, it's gonna keep happening. I'm never gonna have a relationship. It's my weight. It's this, and that is what the enemy does to us. Like he puts these negative views of ourselves because he knows who we can be if we meet our other half. Right when
mhm,
we meet our ideal partner, that power that two people coming together can do in the world for the greater good of God, right? And it's like, no, he's gonna have you coming out of a 10 relationship. And instead of you thinking of it like, okay, this relationship didn't work. What can I do for the next time I get into a relationship, things to work out? Right?
mhm,
That's what positive thinking does. It just shifts your perspective into solutions. This one didn't work out, but that doesn't mean all of them are not going to work out. That doesn't mean that my weight is a problem. That doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, that I can never be in a good relationship or I hope. That doesn't mean any of that. The devil wants you to believe that.
yeah,
The devil wants you to stay there. He wants you to stay in that negative loop and just thinking that over exaggerating everything, that everything is going to go wrong and nothing will ever go right. But what God wants us to do is that he just wants us to see the lesson in the things that didn't work,
right.
right? A 10-year, relationship that didn't work. There's lessons there. I'm pretty sure for you that you may need to work on, right? So that the next person that you're with, or who knows, maybe that person you were meant to be with them later on in life, because there's maybe things you need to shift. We never know,
Mhm,
right? And I mean, clearly being 10 years with someone, there was a lot of love there, you know? So what I'm saying is that when things don't work, we tend to see ourselves and we just put ourselves down, right? We get
yeah,
low self-esteem. We don't want to get motivated to do much with our lives. We just think that we suck at life and that things will never get better. Nobody's ever going to love us. We're not lovable enough, right? That's what
mhm,
happens initially. But what we can do is shift that. This didn't work out, but what can I do for the next time? What were the things that I was at fault, right?
mhm,
Because we love to look at the other person. We love
mhm,
to look at that they were wrong. They did this. If only they would have changed. When all along, it takes two to tango. When all along you could have done some things yourself too to help that relationship work. But we
yeah,
don't have to put ourselves down when those things happen because we're human. Things happen. But what we don't want to do is stay there. What we don't want to do is allow that to bring us into isolation, right? And into a state where we don't pursue our goals, we don't pursue what we really want to do. We just become disconnected with ourselves and God. And that's what happens to a lot of people. And we have the power to shift that. And that's, what this episode is all about, not allowing those negative thoughts to eat at you so much that you don't see the light, that you don't see the way out, that you don't even try to see the way out, and how that impacts you mentally, you physically, and your reality.
yeah. Totally. I felt that in every part of my body. Because I think there's so much truth in all of that. And the first step is being able to recognize that and own that for yourself, even down to, yes, this didn't work out. What are the things, God, that I need to shift in my life to become the person that you need me to be, to bring the person that I desire into my life? And I think that's very powerful. But to the cognitive bias piece, the one thing that you were saying that also jumped out at me and ties back to episode 2 where we were talking about positive relationships was how cognitive bias will lead to us skewing the reality that we see and our perception and reinforcing our negative thoughts. And what
Mm,
came up for me in that was This is why it's important for us to have positive people in our life.
Yep.
Because when you have a negative reality, or when your perception has been skewed, remember, if your perception is skewed, it means that what you're seeing is not actual reality. And you may not even be aware of it. But a person that is positive, that's truly a positive friend, a positive relationship you have in your life, they can decipher the two. They can see, I don't think what you're seeing is really the right picture. I think what you're seeing is a little bit
Mm.
different than what reality is. And they'll call you out on that, and they'll hold you accountable to readjusting the lens, refixing what you're looking through and what you're seeing to see what's really valuable and needed for you. And so this is why I love what we do. And when we're talking about these, is because all of these are connected. You can't have one without the other. You start to see the patterns. And so the people you surround yourself, those positive people, aren't there just because you need someone to be your hype man, right?
Mm-hmm.
These people are in your life because if they're truly being sent into your life to be a positive person, to be a light in your life, they're gonna hold you to a certain level of accountability, and they're gonna be honest with you about what the reality of your situation is. And they're not gonna say it in a way that's gonna beat you down. They're gonna say it in a way in which they're providing you opportunities to step up. And that's what we really need in our life, is more
Mm.
people who are going to provide the opportunities for you to step up. Are you going to meet the challenge, or are you going to back down and allow negativity, that loop, to stay on that merry-go-round? It's totally up to you.
Yeah.
Your choice.
Yeah, I mean, we all have negative thoughts from here, here and there. It's
Yeah.
normal. But what cognitive bias is really showing us is that when you're constantly thinking negative, is going to put you in a loop where when things happen, you make everything like a big deal. Everything is gonna
Mhm.
go wrong. One negative thing happens, oh my God, that's gonna keep happening. Things are never gonna get better. That's what happens when you're in a state of constant negative thoughts. And that can severely mess with your mental health when you're just in this loop of negative thinking, anything happens, you're never even able to go to the positive or to the
Mhm.
solutions or to, what can I do differently next time? You're just it keeps you there. And we want to be mindful of that, y'all. We want to be mindful, like, let's try, like, I get it. We're human. We're going to think negative sometimes. But let's try to sometimes go to the positive and see how can we change things? Because everything is in our power and is in our control to shift, right? Even if at first, as I was saying in another episode, even if at first it's just your perspective of the situation, right? Then we get to taking action to actually change the situation so our reality can be different. I want to give an example, and I don't want to be too long-winded, but I want to give an example of something that happens to me with my funding company, right? So when you're doing funding, not everybody is going to qualify for the highest limits, right? Even if you want to, it's a lot of gray area. There's no black and white. And some of my clients think because they have a certain credit score, a certain profile, they're gonna get that $75,000, let's say Chase approval. And that's just not the reality. There's no magic ball that I can 100% know what somebody's 100% gonna get, right? I can guesstimate, I can give a range, but things happen, right? We're dealing with humans, we're dealing with technology, things can happen. So something just happened to me yesterday that is interesting because it caught me in this negative loop and everything that we're talking about with that, cognitive bias response. And it was I had applied for a Chase credit card through my relationship bank manager from one of my clients. And this guy, had a very good credit profile, credit score, credit profile. And I was like, okay, he's gonna get the high limit card. There's just no way he's not. So the application went through, everything is good. I told my client, hey, call Chase the next day, check on the application. He called 2 days later and they said the application was denied. I'm like, there's just no way. That's impossible. And when he originally told me that, like, I felt my client's disappointment. I don't like to disappoint my clients. I internalize that. I take that personal. I started to feel like crap immediately. And I was like, hell no, that didn't really happen. Like he's teasing me. And no, like it did get declined. And I told him, hey, call back and see like what happens. See if we can get a reconsideration. And I'm fuming. It was already like kind of after hours. So my RM was off of the clock. So I couldn't like call him and ask him questions. And I went into this negative, deep state in my mind that I started to, my self-esteem started lowering. I started to feel like, maybe like, this is just not going to work. And I started overgeneralizing and catastrophizing this situation that, this one negative event, I turned it into, it's going to keep happening. This is going to keep happening. Like I'm doing something wrong. And I was like, girl, we're not going there. We're not going there. We're not going to personalize this. We're not going to make it like you did something wrong. A denial can always be shifted to an approval. Figure it out. And I centered myself, and I just, told, like, said a prayer to God, like, I don't want to feel this way, right? I don't need to feel this way. Like I did my job how I do for everybody else. This one client, it didn't work out. This is a specific individualized situation. I am not going to put this, that this is just for everybody, right? So after a couple minutes, I started to feel better because I let it go, right? I let it go, and I'm like, God, you're in control. Everything that I do through you. And I'm not going to make this into a big deal and make this like there's going to be a pattern, because it's not. It's just one event, right? So I calmed myself down. I gave my client encouraging words like, hey, denials can always be worked around. We're going to figure it out. Worst case scenario, we remove the inquiry and reapply. Like, we're not going to stress, right? So this morning, I ended up calling the RM. He called me back, and he was like, yeah, I just got that denial. Maybe they just need a document, like a EIN document, which is like for the business. And I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, don't worry about it. So I told my client was like, yeah, the RM just called me. We're going to go through a verification call because it was something with a verification. So now that's in process. And if I yesterday would have had this negative loop and not gotten myself out of it, I would have gave my client that negative feelings, but I didn't. I gave him hope, because I had to become hopeful, right? I had to be like, girl, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get to the solution. But I seen how if I would have continued in that negative spiral, how that would have not only impacted me, my day, my night, but it would have impacted my client, because he was like disappointed. And I just realized how beautiful it is when you don't allow yourself to stay in a negative, hole, and you do what you can to get out of it. So I'm grateful I did that. Still in process of whatever's going to happen, but whatever the outcome is, that is an isolated situation. I am not going to put that one event, like, if it's going to keep happening, which I have a tendency of doing. So I'm just kind of being very transparent and vulnerable about that, because I know that, we're all human and we all go through that. So it's like, y'all, you're not alone. So, I didn't want to be long-winded, but I did want to put that out there, because I think it just really shows the effects of negative thinking, but how we can turn that, and, things can work out just with that simple shift. All right. So the next one I want to go through is our stress response, right? Our ability to respond to stress and how negative thinking impacts it, right? So negative thinking releases a stress hormone, right? It's called cortisol, right, in our brain when we in a heightened state of stress. Chronic stress can impair our cognitive functions. It can affect our memory and contribute to mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. Chronic stress has been linked to various health issues, including cardiovascular problems, weakened immune system, and disrupted sleep. And y'all, I have gone through all of them, because me and stress, okay, I just make sometimes a small little like rock into a mountain. And I know we all do that, but I'm like the queen of it. I'm just going to be honest, right? And I've noticed that when I'm in this heightened stress, before, like, for years, I would rarely get sick. I would get sick maybe once every 2 years, right? And then I started noticing that, like, when I was in my last job, like the last few years of it, I was really stressed and I did not know how to manage. Like, I was overwhelmed, I was stressed, and I started getting sick often. Like, literally every 3 months, I had a cold, I had a flu. I was always sick. My memory, I will forget, and people will talk to me and I'll be like, I'm sorry, what did you say? What did you say? And I noticed that, like, I felt like I was going like crazy. Like, what's going on with my memory? Why am I always getting sick? Like, my immune system was shot, and I didn't understand. My heartbeat would beat irregularly when I was, like, laying down at night. And I've noticed stress is a killer. It is huge. And what impacts stress is our negative thinking about situations, about our ability to not put things in their own department in our lives and in our minds, like not organizing things and just piling everything up into just one scenario, So we're having stress at work, we're having stress with our partners, our kids, finances, and we just put everything in one pot. And that overwhelms us, it burns us out, and our bodies just shut down. Our mind shut down. Our ability to function shuts down, because we're looking at everything that's going on. And instead of saying, okay, let me just try to take care of this today. Let me try to take care of that tomorrow. Like, everything is going to work out. Let me get resourceful. Let me see who can help me out with these problems. You just freeze and you don't do nothing. And you just allow all the stress to pile up, and it heavily impact your life. And all these things have happened to me. I'm sure, Antoine, they've happened to you with, having high stress and getting anxiety. Like, I mean, my anxiety has gotten so bad where I've had to call 911. Like, I've had to call the ambulance to come, and because I thought I was getting a heart attack. And each and every time it was just panic attacks about work, panic attacks about, me wanting to just be better, do better, and me putting myself down and being my own worst enemy. Most of the times they were that. And maybe sometimes a heartbreaker too. Somebody just left me or something. And I just didn't know how to deal. And my thoughts were never positive. My thoughts were never solution oriented. My thoughts were never, what can we do to be better? My thoughts were just, I suck. My life sucks. Things are not going to get better. I'm, hopeless, not hopeful. And I noticed, like, in that time of my life, constantly getting sick, constantly having things happening to me, I seen how that messed with my mental health. Like, I really thought for a moment, like, girl, you going crazy. And I wasn't going crazy. I just was in a negative state, constant negative state, allowing things to happen and me not finding the solutions, and me just thinking that my world is going to crumble. Have you felt like that, Antoine? Like, overwhelmed,
Absolutely.
and you couldn't really handle your stress response to things because you're just burdened with negativity?
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, and I was just thinking as you were talking about where this has shown up in my life, I'd say I've had bouts of stress over this last year pretty excessively as I went through the transition of losing my job, then trying to start up some businesses and those not going through, and financial headaches and stresses. I mean, there's a lot of stress that I've endured over this past year. And yeah, I think everything you were saying is where I started to feel. I even felt like my body was starting to shut down, oftentimes. And I would say one of the things that really helped me was finding ways to relieve some of that stress. And so I started getting regular in my time of working out at the gym, even if it meant I just was going to the gym for like 15, 20 minutes. I didn't care. I was like, I need to go there because moving my body became a
Yeah.
very huge anecdote to the stress responses that my body was having as I was going through those experiences. And it did. I think the biggest thing I can remember all of it was it felt so overwhelming. It felt like everything I turned around, there was another issue or another problem or something else that was coming
Mm-hmm.
up. And I struggled with compartmentalizing all of those different issues into their respective spaces. And so what ended up happening was just like you said, it just became this one big pot. And
Yeah.
so there was never this moment of, hey, this is important, but it's not urgent. So you can set that to the side. These two, they're urgent and very important. You need to get on them like ASAP. I couldn't do that. My brain just wasn't able to do it. It just said everything in this pot is urgent and important, and you're behind the eight ball. And if you don't do something, your life is over. Not realistically, but that's what it felt like
Yeah.
as I was going through that experience.
Yeah, it sucks, you know what I mean? But we all have the ability to shift, the mindset. You went through a lot in this last year, you know what I mean? And you have been inching your way through it, figuring it out. One thing didn't happen. Okay, I gotta pivot. I gotta pivot. Like, you've just been pivoting and pivoting and pivoting, but you haven't stopped. You know what I mean? And I know that it hasn't been easy. I'm sure that it has impacted your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty about it is that you have not quit on yourself, right? Because y'all, if Anton would have quit, he would have not been coming on this podcast. He would have just said, Ari, I ain't even there spiritually to give it to you. And as we see Anton showing up. Anton gives awesome feedback to our conversations. He comes up with great content, and he's not allowing these things to get him so down where he can even participate in something God led. You're still allowing God to lead you, and negativity does not allow you to still connect with God when you're in a deep state of negativity and a deep state of stress and just being overwhelmed by life circumstances. We just tend to stray away
Mm-hmm.
from God. That's what we tend to do. And I haven't seen you do that. right? I seen you always try, continue to try to overcome and figure it out and, give it to God and try to become, better in the situation and seeing yourself and what you can improve upon instead of just waiting for all the answers to come while you sit at home and do nothing. You
Right.
haven't been doing that. And that's the beauty about God, the beauty about, shifting our perspectives, that even if our situations don't change, our mindset can shift first and it can give us relief, because that's what we feel is relief when we shift to how things can go differently, what we can do differently, what we're going to take action on to shift
Mhm.
things. At first, there's no movement, but over time, you gain momentum. And that momentum then shifts to your reality shifting. The last one that I really want to talk about is our emotional regulation. We're not able to regulate our emotions when we're in a constant state of negativity, right? So, negative thoughts, they can interfere with your ability to regulate your emotions, right? This can lead to heightened feelings of sadness, anger, or frustration, right? And it can make it more difficult to manage your emotional responses effectively. We cannot regulate our emotions effectively when we're constantly thinking negative. How can
Mhm.
we? Like, there's just no way. We are not even able to process our emotions when we're in a state of fret, when we're in a state of negativity, when we're in a state of feeling like the world is coming and it's coming to crumble, right? We are just quick to snap at people, like we spoke about last time, and become disrespectful, right? We gonna become angry and maybe say things that we don't mean. We might get sad and isolate, get depressed, right? And when these things happen, we might talk to ourselves like, girl, shake out of it, get out of it. Like, I don't want to feel this way no more. Get out of bed, get out of bed. We might try to tell ourselves these things, but it's a stronghold that it has on us. And it severely impacts our mental health, like severely, and our physical health, because we don't even want to go on a walk, right? We don't even want to eat healthy. We don't even want to open our Bible or listen to gospel music or go to church or do all of the things that we know are helpful for our lives. We can't, because it's a stronghold that we cannot control. And we can see how that can manifest into us having, that depression and not being around people, not wanting to be around people. Even if people want to be around you, they're like, hey, girl, I'm going to come over. We're just finding excuses to not even hang out with people. Right. And it's all just because we've allowed circumstances to make us feel inferior. We've allowed circumstances to inhibit our mind and have us in this state of negative thinking, right? And I'm sure that we've all been through this, Antoine. Like, have you seen yourself in this situation where you're not able to control your emotions because you're just such in a negative state that trying to think positive is just seems impossible, even though you're telling yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're in that stress state, like you were just saying before, we were talking about our stress response. When we're in that state, my experience was everything was crumbling down around me and there was no way out. And so, what I think that evoked in me was this kind of fight or flight response where my emotions were very irregular. I would find myself being a bit snappy or snippy at certain things that people may say or way people may talk to me about certain things. I felt my patience was very low. I couldn't, like, I would get almost irritated with how things weren't moving how I wanted them to move in that moment. And I think that's natural. Like when we're going through those experiences, we want to find some level of control. And I think that was just my body's response of trying to control things or control the feelings that I was having in that moment. But yeah,
Yeah.
there was definitely a lot of moments where I could go from being angry about something to just being in a state of just being down, like feeling as though there is no way out. This is it. You know, I'm in a dark place. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't.
Mm.
I don't I'm grateful for those times because I think
Yeah.
those times showed me something within myself and what I can overcome. And so if I ever go back to that place at any point in my life, we don't know what can happen. If I ever did, I think my response in that second time will be very different because I've been there before. I know what it's
Yeah.
like. I know what I'm capable of by being, a child of God. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's been kind
Yeah.
of my experience.
I don't want to interrupt you, Anton, but now I'm having some problems with controlling my emotions because my client just texted me and
Oh
he got
no.
approved. He got approved for
I love it.
$55,000 with Chase.
Wow,
And
look at
I
that.
am just like from a denial that I put it in God's hands, y'all. I put it in God's hands. I was like, I am not gonna allow this situation because I didn't do anything wrong. But man, look at the devil tried me yesterday. I was
Yeah.
like, no, girl, we're gonna be hopeful. We're gonna figure it out. And look, I spoke with my RM. They went through underwriting, they verified whatever to verify, and he's like 55K approval.
Nice.
And I cannot control my emotions of how happy I am because of my positive thinking.
Right.
Like when I'm telling you, y'all, to leave things in God's hands because He comes through, God provides you a peace that it's like it doesn't even matter what's the outcome because He's there for you. And I'm just so grateful about how amazing God is to me. Like, yes, I'm not controlling my emotions right now because I'm so grateful. Like, God is so good to me, y'all. Like on this call, I never like really like looking at my phone or dealing with business. But even when we started the show, my RM called me and I was like, Antoine, give me a minute. I got to take this call. Because God told me like, it's okay if you're a few minutes behind. And I think it was just to show you all how amazing He is. Like I gave my client hope. I was like, no, I'm not going to get no bad review. I'm awesome. And God, showed me that, showed my client that, but I stayed steady in Him. Like I'm just so grateful for God, and like I will love Him to the day I die because His love for me, like His grace on me, His ability to always come through for me, like it's just worth every sacrifice that I go through in my life. It's worth it, y'all. It's worth it for God. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. I'm sorry that I'm crying, but these
No,
are
let
tears
those
of joy
tears.
because like it always shocks me when He comes through. Like I expect that, I know like God's gonna come through for me, but when He does, it's just a feeling like like you have your best friend right there, like your father, like that nothing can go wrong. That even if something seems like it's going wrong, it's because He's preparing for something better. He's preparing for a better outcome, and that's my life. Like you guys got to see it in this hour of however much time we've been talking, but you've guys seen it. Like that's just my life, and I'm grateful, and it's just worth every bit of blood, sweat, and tears that I go through. So, anywho, I'm
I
excited.
love that. I
Hallelujah.
love that.
So,
Congratulations.
oh, thank you, thank you. I'm more excited for my client because I know what he needs the funds for and what he's trying to do, and like I'm excited for him. I love making my clients happy. I love when they get the outcomes that they're expecting, and um, I'm just glad to be able to do it. I'm so glad to be God's vessel in this business, funding business, and everything that I touch because like God is in it at all, and I'm just grateful that I can be His hands and feet.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that. So you see, negative thinking, we cannot regulate our emotions, but with positive thinking, we still can regulate our emotions. But I would much rather go through have my positive thinking and how to deal with tears of joy and emotions of joy, happiness, and and just gratitude for my life. So
Right.
so to kind of wrap this up, y'all, addressing our negative thoughts through techniques like mindfulness, right? Being mindful of our thoughts, and that's like the first thing. Being mindful of what we're thinking, what's going on, how we're reacting, being mindful of it. Having positive self-talk, what we're telling ourselves, right? Trying to find the solutions, trying to find people in our lives that can come and give us some support and positive talk if we can do it for ourselves. That all of that can rewire our brain and improve our mental well-being, right? Because we can rewire. We can have things in our brain just going one way, and it's just you feel like it's ruling you. But you can rewire that and say, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to go over here. And mentally, we can do that when we improve our self-positive talk, right? When we are mindful of where our mind is going at times and stopping. But more than anything, just giving it to God. If you can do nothing else, if you can find the positive thoughts or the positive people, God is there with you. And like I had like somebody tell me, oh, like sometimes I get preachy. And it's like, if this sounds preachy, like, oh, give it to God. I'm sorry, but it works. I'm sorry, but it works. I'm sorry, but God works. Everything that he is, he's amazing. And it's worked for me, it's worked for Antoine, it's worked for many people that I know. So that is, I'm always going to be preachy. Sorry, not sorry. God is good. God is amazing. God loves us all. If worst case scenario, you're like, I don't have it, give it to God. You know, not even worst case. That should be the first thing you do. But sometimes, you know, we can't just be mindful and shift ourselves. But if we can't, because something is burdening us that much, and you do not know, you're like, I have not done nothing wrong. Like, I'm doing everything right. Why is this not working? Ask God. He'll give you the answers. Ask God to show you the way. He'll show you the way. Ask God to be there for you, to give you peace. You'll find peace. Ask God to re-navigate your life if you feel like you're not in the right path, and he will re-navigate your life. Sometimes instantaneously, the very next day. Sometimes it may take weeks or months, but just don't give up. Stay the course. Thinking positively is never going to be like played out. It is truthfully the best way to have a awesome reality, an awesome life, awesome relationships, an awesome relationship with yourself. And it can avoid us having health issues, right? Mental health issues, depression, sadness, isolation, anger, right? It can relieve us from all of that. And you guys are capable, right? I didn't think I was capable because I'm always thinking negative. But man, God has turned it around, and he can turn it around for you. As usual, if you have any thoughts, comments, or anything you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. And with that, thank you for tuning in. And until our next episode, always remember that having faith in God, having faith in yourself, and having faith in others will create the evolution that you are seeking.